Call to order the June 5th, 2024 Technical Advisory Committee meeting. Staff, can you please call the roll so we can establish a quorum?
At this time, I'm only asking those TAC members attending in person to respond by saying here when I call your name. I want to remind you to unmute your microphones by pushing the button on the base prior to responding. Alternates, please also state your name if you are attending on behalf of a TAC representative. Jim Bell,
Here.
Naresh Varapu,
Here.
Jason Kaufman,
Here.
Denise Malone, Jamie Brown,
Here.
Terrence Bailey, John Paul O'Connor, Alex Hansen,
Here.
Jessica Keller, Penny Wilson,
Here.
Michael Giambron,
Here.
Brian Davis,
Present.
Josh Nagel,
Ira Danglebin, alternate.
Aaron Hoffman,
Here.
Joyce Kai, Lorraine Cargill,
Vicky Katanis for Lorraine Cargill.
Thomas Hernandez, Anders Vian,
Present.
Kim Delaney, Kim Glass Castro,
Felipe LaFaso is Palm Springs. She's the alternate.
Christopher Marsh, Jonathan Rainsvold, Natalie Crowley,
Here.
Mo Alturk. Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, agenda item 1B, modifications to the agenda. Staff, are there any modifications to the agenda?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 1C, motion to approve. We have in front of you all the minutes for the May 1st, 2024 meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, may I have a motion to adopt the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Right, motion by Brian. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Jim. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries. Agenda item 1D, general public comment and public comments on the agenda. Instructions on how to provide public comments are included in the agenda. Staff, are there any general comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, moving on. Agenda item 1E, comments from the chair and member comments. Do any members have any comments at this time? Seeing none. I would like to note that we have a fairly full agenda. So, and we did have a slightly later start time. So we can all be mindful of the time today so that we can get through our agenda swiftly. I know staff would appreciate that. The next agenda item is 1F, TAC Liaison Report. At this time, I would like Nathan George to provide an update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. Welcome in for this month. Want to just highlight a few items for you, and I will remind everybody that the full liaison report's available on our website after the meeting. So first up, want to highlight a few big wins or big acknowledgements here in our region, both for the city of Boca Raton. So the first is a huge recognition of their work on Safe Streets and Roads for All. The city was awarded a $4 million grant to continue work on their development of their action plan and demonstration activities. It's a really exciting infusion of that capital that is coming into our region, one of the only cities in our region to receive, or in the state of Florida, to receive that funding. So that's a really exciting enhancement that they've received. Also want to acknowledge that the city recently joined NACTO. For those of you who were following the news, NACTO recently hosted their annual conference, Designing Cities, here in the state, and city joined that organization. So really exciting to have them as a member of NACTO. Kudos to them, and I'm sure if anybody else is interested in joining, they'll be a great resource for you. All right, next up, let's get on the bus challenge. So you can join the challenge and ride on June 15th. There was the county recently had a proclamation for that. So want to encourage everybody, palmtran.org/rider challenge to join that challenge. and get out and try our Palm Tran bus service here in the county. And another highlight for you, National Dump to Pump Day is coming up June 20th. Use code Transit 2024 from June 16 to 22 in the Paradise Pass app. So again, those just wanted to give those couple of highlights. The remaining items you can see in the print liaison report. If you have any questions, please feel free to let us know. Thanks.
Thank you, Nathan. Do any committee members have any comments on this report? Seeing none, I just want to personally recognize Kim Delaney. She was designated as a Palm Transit champion. And as it relates to the Let's Get on the Bus Challenge, I had the personal opportunity to participate on that Let's Get on the Bus Challenge, and I highly recommend it. It was really fun and enjoyable, and I learned a lot. So it was great, and congrats, Kim. All right, moving on to action items. Item A, motion to recommend adoption of amendment number 4 to the TPA's Transportation Improvement Program. At this time, I'd like to invite Andrew Euler, Deputy Director of Programs, to present this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. So today, your two action items are going to be back-to-back Transportation Improvement Program items. So the first one's going to be our existing Transportation Improvement Program. That's fiscal year 24 through 28. This is a quick amendment requested by FDOT. And what this amendment is doing is it's one project, it's adding a right-of-way phase. So that's why it triggers amendment is when you add a new phase that's not existing in the TIP. That triggers an amendment. And as a reminder, it's really only impacting this product. You're not voting on the whole TIP today. And so that one project is Congress Avenue at 10th Avenue North. This is a safety project. It's to install additional light poles and upgrade existing lighting to LED. It replaces existing span wire signal with a mast arm, has flashing yellow arrows. It also extends the northbound left turn lane. And so the right-of-way piece for this, it's required mostly to fit the sidewalks and signal infrastructure in the southwest, northwest, and northeast quadrants. And then FDOT is also acquiring a permanent easement for sidewalk and transit shelter to accommodate a bus shelter at Palm Trans Stop 647 on Congress, which is just south of 10th Avenue North. The total funding for the right-of-way phase is going to be spread out over a few years. It's $590,000. The one that's really triggering the amendment is the earlier one, and that is for $361,100 in fiscal year 2025. This is a safety product. It's actually using safety funds that come from the federal government. Quick note on that is it's actually state funds at this time, but the state will seek reimbursement of federal safety funds in the future. That's what it means when it says advanced construction. And that's all I have for you. A quick one. Again, it's adding that right-of-way phase to this project.
Thank you, Andrew. Staff, are there any public comments on this item?
Yes, Madam Chair. Chris Marsh, you can proceed with your public comment.
I had a work conflict.
Chris Marsh, do you have a public comment?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I wanted to join the meeting virtually. I had a conflict and was not able to attend in person.
Okay, we don't allow virtual attendance, but you're welcome to watch the meeting. We'll mark you as excused.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, staff. Are there any other public comments at this time?
No,
Okay,
Madam
seeing
Chair.
none, do any committee members have any comments on this agenda item? Seeing none. I would like a motion, please, to approve the item, and then I can open the floor for further discussion if needed.
So moved.
Motion by Terrence,
Second.
second by Brian. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item B, motion to recommend adoption of fiscal year 2025, 2029 TIP. At this time, I'd like to ask Andrew Euler to again present this item.
Thank you again. So the last one was our current TIP. This is the final reading of the upcoming TIP. So this starts come July 1st. And so this is going to cover the next 5 years. I'm actually going to do a pretty shortened presentation. I did the full presentation last time around. So this one's fairly brief. It's only going to take me a few minutes, and I'll just provide you a few updates since our last meeting. So what is a TIP? It's our 5-year funding, federal and state funds for projects within Palm Beach County. Covers 25 to 29. And then to get to this point of the process, it is a long endeavor, over a year's time to do this, right? So we have a product development, our call for projects that we do for our TPA priorities, working with product applicants, reviewing those and putting those into our draft list of project products that's approved by the committees and the governing board. That happened last year in July. And then that is given to FDOT. They look at all the cost estimate updates in the current work program / TIP to ensure everything is stable with that. They look at the new priorities of the TPA. They're also looking at their statewide priorities and other products they have for maintenance, rehabilitations, assist capacity. All that is then provided into a draft work program seen by the governing board. And then after that comment period, they then release their final draft work program. That's what we build the TIP off of. So that's what you're seeing. You're seeing that consistency between the work program and the TIP. And that is done statewide. Differences to that would be that the TPA also adds additional projects. We add local products when we can for reference purposes. So for example, we include the 5-year road program from the county. So the TIP products sections, it's broken down into various categories. Our TPA priority products, FDOT priority projects, and then operations and maintenance. Overall, for the funding summary, this is a graph that you probably didn't see last time around, but you can see the breakdown of the different sections within the TIP, and it broken down by the funding type: federal, state, turnpike, and local. So major investment, especially when it comes to the turnpike of the strategic intermodal system capacity. So over $1 billion invested there. The next categories are going to be the TPA priority products. That's major products, local initiatives, and transportation alternatives. And that's $367 million of investment. And then the other categories are going to be, a lot of operations and maintenance, and then our other modes. Summary of TPA priorities: $367 million in investments. A lot of that going towards road capacity. So we still have those major projects of State Road 7 in there. That's fully funded in the work program in the TIP. Atlantic Avenue widening. Those both include pedestrian bicycle facilities. And then we have a major standalone investments in complete streets, pedestrian bicycle facilities of $90 million, transit vehicles and shelters. So that's going to be Palm Tran and SFRTA. Then there's lighting, and then intersection and traffic signals. And then this is my last slide for you. So final adoption is going to be this month at the governing board meeting. It's been open for about 2 months now. Presented that draft in May, and this is for the final adoption here. Some changes since last time around, since you've seen it. We had one question, Alex, you mentioned about the SFRTA, the tri-rail extension to Jupiter, the study that and what's going to entail for fiscal year 2025. That's upcoming. So AFDOT is going to be starting work on that. They're actually joining that funds with a larger contract with Broward. So it's going to be about $4 million to use in that contract, and it's going to go to various work orders. But for our piece, that money that's in the TIP is going to go towards a little bit more analysis, most likely of site selection and site design of potential stations for the Jupiter extension. So that's how that's geared towards that. That final contract hasn't really started yet, so the details will be worked out in the near future here. Other than that, updated a little of the appendices, added some more local products for reference, and we're still working on, with our new consultant, a more interactive dashboard for our TIP long-term. So hopefully we publish that in a month or so is what we're hoping for our timeline. And then they're also working on some more reporting features so we can see, for example, the other example we had for the summary tables of showing that before and after of changes in the work program in the TIP. So I'll be forthcoming in the future. That's all I have for you, so I can take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Staff, are there any public comments on this?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Do any committee members have comments on the action item on the proposed motion for the TIP? Terrence?
Andrew, on that tri-rail extension north, before the scope and the contract is let for whoever's doing this analysis, could you have someone, whoever the appropriate entity is, come to this body to have an open dialogue on what they're about to commission and what they're spending the money on, so that we have a clear understanding, I think those of us in the north end would really like to know what is about to get commissioned in the way of whatever it is, because while I appreciate your brief brevity in the description, I don't think I understand what we're going to spend $4 million on, and will that actually advance the ball to getting Tri-Rail to the north end of the county? So again, I don't want to hold up this item, but if we could bring, again, the ask is if you could bring whoever, so we can have a real good dialogue before the contract is signed of what they're going to do. Thank you.
Brian, would you take this one?
Yeah.
Sure.
Brian?
Brian Ruscher, Deputy Director of Multimodal. So, yes, if the committee wishes to have an agenda item on this item specifically, this is a DOT-let contract for PD&E, not just for Palm Beach County, but also for Broward County, who's a little bit further along, and they've decided to include us as optional for PD&E and studies. So if it is the will of the committee, then we can, I think the committee needs to make a motion. Second, to request the FDOT to have a presenter come and make the case for that. The contract is planned to be let next week. I don't think that plan is going to change for what it's worth. And I think in my discussions with Lisa Mack, the contacted FDOT, they're open and they're flexible on what they want to study, and they want to help us move the mission and the vision forward in Palm Beach County. But if it's the will of the body to ask DOT once maybe the selection is made or before, or if you would like, I can try to put you in contact directly with the staff member, then we can go through that. But otherwise, that's where they are with the process at this moment.
Thank you, Brian. If I could make the suggestion, Terrence, because I think there's a whole lot of people sitting around this table that have been very anxious to see this PD&E move along, and we're thrilled to see new life into the PD&E. But I think timing is everything, and it sounds like we've had some luck and some advancement in being able to join with this DOT initiative. So I would say that when the timing is right, when you have actual information to be able to present, then that be presented to this body. But I feel like staff, there's a lot of moving parts, so I would hate to disrupt anything in that process.
Especially
But I
if
think a
they're-
lot of us here would be very curious to know what the specifics are in the PD&E.
Right, especially since our partners to the south, they are in a much more advanced position when it comes to these projects, and they have a need for studying PD&E on their station area plans. So
Mhm.
I understand and I appreciate that, because I'm also a little curious about what we can do, given that we've moved this item forward every few years. So if it's the will of the body, we can make that presentation when more information is available.
Does that
from
work for
DOT.
everybody? When the timing is right, and staff will rely on you on making that call?
Yeah,
I'm
and as
sure
a
you'll do.
reminder, if you can get a motion in a second for when you were.
Okay,
requesting
may
an
I
agenda
have a
item.
motion, please, to have staff bring this particular agenda item on the PD&E extension of Tri-Rail to North County at the appropriate time? Motion, please.
So moved.
Motion by Terrence. Do I have a
Second.
second? Second by Alex Hansen. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed. Motion carries. Thank you, Brian. So are there any other committee member comments at this time on the TIP agenda item? All right, seeing none. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Terrence,
Second.
second by
Comment?
Jim. Oh, I'm sorry, I have a comment.
No, after,
Okay,
a comment after the motion has been made.
okay, all right. Got it. We have a motion and a second. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, again, the TIP includes the State Road 7 extension as well as the State Road 7 widening projects by FDOT. City of West Palm Beach is in litigation on those projects. City opposes both of them because of concerns about our water quality, so I cannot support the TIP because of the inclusion of those two projects. I just want to put it on the record.
All right. Thank you, Alex. I have a motion on the table by Terrence, seconded by Jim. Any other discussion at this point from committee members? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
All right, motion carries with one dissenting vote. Then, all right, we're done for our action items. So we're moving on to our informational items. So agenda item 3A is the US 27 connector feasibility study. At this time, I would like to invite Claudia Olart with DOT to present this item. Welcome, Claudia.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Our team is here today to present the findings for the alternative corridor evaluation study that we conducted for a new connector roadway in the area of Belglade. And our consultant team is here today to present these findings to you. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Claudia. My name is Kurt Lehman. I'm with Cambridge Systematics, and we helped throughout the duration of this project. The background for this alternative corridor evaluation study was that there were many studies performed in previous years on an alternative corridor in the Glades area, the Belglade area. You can see the map there, the current traffic moving from State Road 80 east to West Palm Beach, connecting that to US 27 in the area of South Bay, is through State Road 80 going through downtown Belglade. So instead of that corridor, there have been many studies in the past looking into if there can be an alternative new roadway or an expansion of capacity of an existing roadway. So if we go next slide, do I have control of the slide? Okay. Okay. These are some of the previous studies starting all the way back in 2010. US 441 corridor feasibility study report included this discussion. And you can see on the map there, many alternative corridor concepts or alignments, some of which were studied in this evaluation with some minor adjustments. So we had 10 alignment concepts that we were looking at initially. Not these exact 10, but that's where the origin was. There was also a PACE study, US 27 multimodal PACE study. Glades Region Master Plan mentioned some of the concerns regarding this alternative corridor. And US 27 multimodal existing conditions data had a lot of the existing conditions data, including natural, physical data that we were looking at. Also, the 2045 long-range transportation plan, cost feasible plan, had this US 27 connector, which was fulfilling this role. And it's shown in the red line on the map on the right. So this is what we're studying to develop concepts regarding this connector. The alternative corridor evaluation process, according to Florida Department of Transportation, it goes as follows. These are the major items that we went through. We studied we looked at the prior studies, and we studied existing conditions in the area, in the study area. We had numerous stakeholder meetings with various stakeholders, industry stakeholders, public stakeholders, Department of Transportation, including the TPA. We had meetings starting as early as 2021, actually perhaps a little bit earlier. I have a slide on the dates of some of those meetings. We developed a purpose and need for the study, including, which I'll show in the future slide, including safety and system linkage. We defined the alternatives and a methodology to evaluate the alternatives. And then we had the evaluation of the alternatives according to those adopted methodologies. And the outcome of the study is recommendations to exclude some of the alternatives from further study and to recommend alternatives for continual study into the design and engineering phase. So that's where we are now, having completed all those steps. And we're finalizing those recommendations and trying to receive input about that. Here's a summary of the stakeholder engagement that we went through. Numerous stakeholder meetings occurred in the past when we were starting this project and throughout the duration. We learned that safety in downtown Belglade with pass-through traffic, including truck traffic, was a major concern. There were also components of an industrial site, an industrial development site that has been uncertain in its planning, and at this phase is sort of less of a concern because it's not moving forward as we originally thought when we initiated the study. So that's coming and out, but that was an industrial site plan that may have supported some elements of initiating the study, but not the only element of initiating the study. The system linkage, therefore, for truck traffic was an important factor to some of the industry stakeholders, including economic development with the employment and increasing employment needs. The purpose and need was developed as follows. The primary needs, according to this study, was safety, especially truck-involved crashes in the downtown Belglade area and other crashes. So that came up in the existing conditions study as a concern and in the stakeholder engagement. System linkage, including adding capacity and increased mobility for traffic passing through the area, including trucks again, and moving of goods, was another primary concern, and economic development was a secondary need. So the purpose of the project was to improve safety and system linkage between US 27 and State Road 80, providing alternatives through the cities of South Bay and Belglade towns there. So these were the 4 alignments that were developed out of all of the review of prior studies and the existing conditions assessment. These 4 alternatives were developed to avoid constraint areas and to summarize the work that had been done previously. We had 2 alignments that were passing to the west of State Road 715, closer to Lake Okeechobee. The 3rd alignment represents an alternative with no new roadway being built, but State Road 715 being widened from 2 lanes to 4 lanes for the extent of from Hooker Highway down to State Road 80 to provide additional capacity. And, alternative 4 passes to the east of Belglade and avoids Belglade in that way. Each corridor was picked to meet the basic purpose and need elements, although this slide is showing the alternative evaluation methodology, those items that were used to evaluate the difference between the alternatives and if any of them could be recommended for elimination from further consideration and what could be recommended for continuing study. We had engineering considerations, environmental and social considerations, cost considerations, and stakeholder input. There are a lot of factors here, so I have them summarized here. Safety impacts, under engineering considerations, safety impacts, utility conflicts, right-of-way needs, drainage, and then other design considerations like alignment and new intersections, new traffic signal considerations rather, for new roads intersecting with existing roads, things of that nature. Under environmental and social considerations, there were many factors that were included in those socioeconomic, cultural, natural, and physical, but there are probably a dozen or more factors in total that were done in the ETDM screening. Cost considerations included capital and operating rough estimates. Some of the cost considerations were not explicit in dollar figures, but more qualitative summaries of what we imagined the cost could be based on certain factors like number of bridges that were impacted, number of canal crossings, and that sort of thing. So this slide shows the summary of the scoring that was done to understand each alternative and their measure in terms of the methodology that we developed. And you can see there, environmental, engineering, cost considerations, stakeholder support. The theme is through our scoring. By the way, the scores there, 1, 2, 3, 1 being a higher score rather being a relatively positive attribute. So everything was adjusted for a higher score being positive. So we summed up the score from the various categories. Alternative 3 seemed to rise to the top in the scoring of the 4 alternatives. Alternative 4 seemed to be the least, the scoring the least. And so that's our basic output from the evaluation of the alternatives. And therefore, all we're saying at this point now is that alternative 3 is a leading alternative, although the other alternatives scored closely, and we're developing our final recommendations. We want to receive the input from the TPA before we finalize those recommendations to either eliminate or recommend certain alternatives. But you can see from the scoring what we might recommend. The summary there is that alternatives 1 and 2 are the higher cost. Alternative 4 is also very high cost. You'll notice that alternative 3 is the lower cost alternative because it doesn't include building a new roadway. But the highest benefits lie with alternatives 1 and 2. They also have unique design challenges, mainly regarding the natural environment, the flooding in the area, moving closer to Lake Okeechobee and the drainage considerations. Alternative 3 has some benefits, but it does not have a new roadway. So when we're looking at the purpose and need of system linkage and safety, it provides some safety benefits. It provides some additional capacity, but doesn't necessarily provide all the same. And I think that is that's the conclusion of the presentation. Oh, okay, yes, sorry. On next steps, we are developing the final alternative corridor evaluation report. And we're going to want to incorporate input from the TPA as a major stakeholder and other internal review with FDOT. The PD&E studies that will come out of this evaluation, out of this study, are sort of pending, and we would like the TPA's support on PD&E studies and prioritization. And we also think that we can include this in the SIS program for potential funding opportunities since it involves SIS roadways. So those are next steps from the conclusion. Thank you.
Okay,
I'm open to, do we have time for question?
yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Staff, are there any public comments on this?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, do any committee members have any comments for the connector feasibility study? Yes, Terrence.
All right, quick question. So in your description of your methodology, you listed off the characteristics that you went through, engineering, design, cost, but then in your matrix to determine the alternatives and the best, it's a 1, 2, 3 system. So how do you translate what I'm going to assume is a dollar cost number? Alternative 1, maybe 10 million, alternative 2, 20, 30. How does that actual cost translate into a 1, 2, 3? And where's the breakdown or the determination? So that's question number 1. And also, how do you integrate the safety factor, lives saved, into that sort of cost profile in that, unfortunately, there is a methodology to calculate for every life saved, there's a social value. And is that factored in to this analysis? Because whereas alternative number 4, and I believe 4 was building a new road east, which basically completely bypasses Belglade, if that's the safest, but the most dollar cost, it may be the least social cost.
Yes, very good points. We did not include the safety considerations in any of the cost scoring. So that's a good point. It's something we could do, although safety was considered separately. So cost was down to the construction and right-of-way estimates, rough estimates, and operating estimates qualitatively. To answer your first question, the cost scoring was based on a relative basis, which costs less got higher score. So is it more? It was more feasible if it was a lower total cost. That doesn't summarize everything about the project, but it was the scoring for that component of the scoring matrix, the evaluation matrix.
Right. Follow up. So is it raw cost or cost per additional trip? Like alternative one cost 10 million, but only added the capacity of 3,000 trips a day, whereas alternative two was 15 million, but added 10,000 trips a day. Like, did you normalize the cost versus the capacity that you're going to add to the network, or is it literally just raw dollar cost?
No, in the cost scoring, it's just the raw cost.
But do you see the problem with that of if the goal of this is to add capacity, wouldn't we want to select the project that adds the least dollar cost per added trip?
Yes, I do. I definitely see your point.
All right,
That's
I
something
yield the
that could-
floor.
Thank you, Terrence. Alex?
Yeah, a couple of the alternatives that you showed are basically roads that would bypass the centers of some of the communities there out west. And I understand the purpose, again, being there's a safety component, which I completely agree and understand with. At the same time, there's a long history of studies that have shown that many of these bypass roads that basically bypass the commercial areas, the downtowns of cities, have an economic impacts on those commercial areas because, again, it's not only the trucks, but there's also now most people will be bypassing on the way from Palm Beach County to out west or vice versa. They'll be bypassing those communities. They would not be stopping there. Which is something that may do otherwise. So was that, I saw some reference to socioeconomic analysis or impacts. Was that included in the socioeconomics? Because I could argue that, again, some of these bypass roads could have an economic impact on businesses in those communities.
That's a great point. And that's something that came up early on in the stakeholder engagement, that there is a inherent conflict between those needs. I mean, the communities there, they want things to be safe. So they don't want trucks that are just going to pass through the town, necessarily flying through where they have pedestrians. However, we don't, we can see the negative side of having a total bypass. And that's why we even got rid of the language of a bypass, but a connector. But of course, you see, it's the same thing. That may in fact inform the stakeholder support scoring, because in the environmental scoring, there were a few things like noise and cultural impacting cultural sites and things like that. Those would have, for the State Road 15 alternative 3, they may have actually made a negative impact. But if we think that alternative 3 is actually more ideal, because it may provide some of the safety benefits, but also doesn't completely remove traffic from the town and the economic repercussions, then maybe something we consider.
Okay. Thank you. I see that we have a public comment. Ruth?
Khursheed Mayadan, you may proceed with your public comment.
Good morning, Khursheed Mahiuddin with Palm Beach County Planning. My two questions are that there was a railroad spur that was included to encourage probably development around Oquilanta, which is a big site and huge project that county has approved for economic development, I believe. And how does it relate to that? And same thing, how is your alternative helping and encouraging that economic development? And have you guys coordinated with Oquilanta site?
I'm not
That's
exactly familiar with that particular site. Do you have a rough location there?
I believe it will probably be around your alternative in blue and purple in around there in the southern end. But I think Brian is in attendance too. He can probably, if he remembers, he can provide some more insight.
If it is the industrial site, yes, we spent a
Yes.
lot of time talking with industry stakeholders about that site in particular.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah,
Okay.
the upside down triangle there where alternative 1 and 2 both sort of pass through
Right.
south of Canal Street. Yeah,
Okay.
that development is a little bit up in the air. It's been an up in the air since we started this study. I don't know if anyone has any further context on that, but it seems as of right now that development may not proceed the way we thought it would when we first started the study. And I can't speak to the impact that will have on the land use as it's represented now, the future land use maps or to anything to that nature. But our understanding was that became less of a concern. At the beginning of the project, it was a major part of the project, but our focus moved more towards safety as we realized that development was not proceeding. And as far as the relationship between the developer, the industry stakeholder and the town of South Bay and other public groups.
Okay. Brian, did
Okay.
you want to chime in or you?
Yeah, I was gonna add, yeah, my concern is we knew it as the inland port, which is, several thousand industrial acres of land use that's out there. It's still on the book, so I understand it may not be that thing, but sometimes industrial land will sit vacant for years, if not decades, before it finally gets activated. So I understand that scheme may or may not come to pass as it was originally envisioned, but nevertheless, the land use is still there. So they haven't come in and petitioned to take it away. Also, just for clarity, Okeelanta is south on US 27 out the Bulls Canal and the railroad spur that's out there. So it's actually off this aerial that we're looking at. So it's well outside of the area. But no, the inland port is what we knew it as several years ago when it came through, and that's the industrial piece. And
Right.
that's more for clarity than anything, but
Absolutely.
Brian, Nathan, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just on behalf of staff, I wanted to ensure that we provide some input as well. So the intention of this project was to provide a bypass, a two-lane roadway, new two-lane roadway, to bypass truck traffic in the downtown area of Belglade. So that's more or less an acknowledgement that the intention is to try and divert traffic off of State Route 80 onto a new roadway facility. I would suggest that alternative 3, as we're looking at a project of this type, and character, we would want to make sure that if we are attracting traffic onto an existing roadway and hopefully it would attract traffic away from State Route 80. If it is just shifting traffic over to 715, we want to ensure that type of project would deliver a complete streets. But so the request to FDOT would be, let's ensure that we are considering the attractiveness of truck traffic and how it will shift in the region as we're considering all our alternatives. The concern, or to pinpoint a concern, and why I'm making this comment, is if we don't attract that truck traffic away, we're still going to maintain a high level of truck traffic on State Route 80, which doesn't satisfy the purpose and need of this intended project. So we may actually not achieve the stated objectives at great expense for a roadway project that is purely driven by roadway capacity.
If I may, quick, Cesar Martinez with FDOT. Like he pointed out at the earlier part of the presentation, and thank you, Nathan, for your clarification of the intent of the study. And part of the intent of the process that we follow is really to find fatal flaws on an alternative. Main outcome of the study was we didn't find any fatal flaws. We have 4 potential corridors. Next step is to perform a PD&E study to narrow down what it would be the preferred alternative going forward, right? In the PD&E study, we'll look into the benefit costs that we were talking earlier, the social aspect that we also mentioned, the economic side as well. So that will be part of the process. But the main intent, again, was to find a potential alternative that can move forward. So we have 4. Now, the next step is for the TPA to prioritize this project going forward for the PD&E study in the next cycle.
Okay. Thank you, Cesar. Yeah, that was going to be my my final comment as well, that through the PD&E study, I know that the alternatives are considered, and I'm assuming that all of these alternatives that are in this feasibility study will be incorporated into the PD&E. I'm not sure if the public has been engaged in the recommendation of alternative 3 at this point, despite the fact that you're entering the PD&E, but that would be my only thought, I don't think we have any representation from the city of Belglade at this committee. And, you know, it's all about being local. So it's critical for that community to be able to have that input and to be able to see where you're going in terms of the recommended alternative. And obviously through the PD&E study, they will, but I mean, this is all about the local community here and how it's going to be impacted. So, oh, I'm sorry, Kim. Those are my comments. Kim.
Well, I'm good. So Kim Delaney for the record from Treasure Coast RPC. To Natalie's point, the Regional Planning Council has been assisting Belglade and South Bay and Pahokee in a whole series of long-range planning conversations. So we're happy to assist and address that need. You know, the smaller communities lean often on the council to provide that representation, and we're doing that with them. So we're happy to get into the details. And in fact, I'll take your contact information and send it to my colleague who's been working with Belglade directly a couple days a week, actually, on their long range planning work. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Kim. All right, we're trying to move along here. We've got still a lot of agenda items for informational. Does anybody have any final comments on this informational item presented?
Real
Yep.
quick. I guess I have a concern based on my comments on your calculation methodology that landed on alternative 3 and staff's comment that alternative 3 basically just makes a wider road. We've been doing that for the last 10,000 years. So I don't know that I'm not necessarily comfortable moving you forward with PDD, recommending alternative 3 when it doesn't look like the alternative that should be the recommended one, but we also don't have the numbers to really, other than anecdotal and what you presented, say that. So I mean, this is information, we're not taking a vote, but if I had my druthers, I'd ask that you run the numbers and use some of these methodologies suggested and come back and see if number 3 still really satisfies the need that was originally commissioned. But I don't know if that's an option, if the DOT is on a timeline where is that an option to address the concerns of this committee? Because some of the calculation methodologies seem to drive us into the same old answer we always magically get when we commission studies like this.
I just want to be clear that this informational item is informational, and I don't think moving it along in any way allows for this committee to endorse or interpret that we are endorsing alternate 3. I want to make sure, to Terrence's point, that this is informational only. By us saying thank you for the presentation, it shouldn't be recognized as any endorsement whatsoever. I think we recognize the information that is presented, but I think your points are
I thought the slide said
are
that
noted.
they had to come here, then they're moving to PD&E.
You're not looking for a recommendation from this committee today, correct?
No, we would I think FDOT would just really appreciates the input, like that input, so that we can make clear recommendations. I mean, like we said, like Cesar said, this is not going to necessarily just move into only alternative 3 going into the PD&E. Part of this process is just eliminating an alternative if we feel like there's a fatal flaw there. So if we move forward, it's possible that alternative 1, 2, 3, and 4 are still considered.
So the comments gathered by today's committee are duly noted as part of your
Exactly.
collection. And does that address your comment, Terrence? Okay, thank you. Moving along, 3B, bicycle and safety pedestrian improvements, A1A. At this time, I would like Chris McCurdy with DOT to present this item. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Chris McCurdy. I work for FDOT and I'm a project manager in the design office. Let's see if I can work this. What am I pushing? There. Okay. All right. So let me go back. Okay, so I'm here to talk about bicycle and pedestrian safety improvements the department is doing on A1A within Palm Beach County. Can I work the clicker? There. Okay. So our agenda for today, we've got 3 different components to the agenda. The first is going to be immediate safety improvements. So that's things the department is working on with the next 6 months. The next will be an ongoing feasibility safety study we have on A1A within Palm Beach County. I'll provide an update on that and details on what that study includes. And the third item, I'm going to be discussing 7 resurfacing projects within Palm Beach County on A1A. Each of those projects includes pedestrian and bicycle upgrades, and I'm going to provide details on those. Okay, so first of all, immediate safety improvements we have going on A1A. So if you look at the picture in the upper right-hand corner, that's a picture of a Sharrow pavement marking on pavement. And what the Sharrow pavement marking, the message is trying to convey is that the travel lane can be occupied by someone using a bicycle or someone using a motor vehicle. And those Sharrow markings are placed on the pavement approximately every 250 feet, with the reminder that bicycles have the ability to take the travel lane. Below that, we have share the road signs, which is another message to the traveling public that bicycles have a right to be there. And so now if we look at the table, there are 7 municipalities that were doing one of these 2 improvements, and they include Delray Beach, Gulfstream, Boynton Beach, Briny Breezes, Ocean Ridge, Manalapan, and Palm Beach. So 2 of them, which are Gulfstream and Manalapan, are installing Sharrows. The rest are going to be installing the shared road signs. And my next slide is going to be kind of a map showing where these different treatments are going to be applied. So it might be hard to see a little bit, but you can see a large portion of Palm Beach County. We have these improvements that are going to be installed within the next 6 months or so. Once the work order is executed, our contractor will have 60 to 90 days to complete installation of either these shared pavement markings or this improved signage. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the current feasibility study we have going on A1A in Palm Beach County. The goal of this study is to look for opportunities to improve bicycle and pedestrian facilities within the county. And so it's a 7-part process, and the entire study will take approximately 9 months. So the first step, which we are wrapping up now, is review transportation plans, data, and studies. And this includes FDOT's bike and ped our master plan. It includes the LRTP. It includes the TPA's Vision Zero related to bicycles and pedestrians. The data collection assessment is item 2, and that includes a desktop safety review, signal flow analytics review. It includes going in the field, driving the corridor, getting out, taking pictures, looking at problem areas. Item 3 is determining needs and goals based on the evaluation to that point. So starting to identify what can be done in the corridor based on review of existing documents and going in the field and evaluating the current conditions in person. 4th is identifying and evaluating the performance of potential short-term, midterm, and long-term improvements. And what we mean by short-term improvements would be those things that can be implemented in a short period of time, say 6 months or less. The midterm would take a little longer, and the long-term would be something we would be looking at including in a project in our 5-year work program. So we're going to start out, we're going to identify the needs and figure out how we can get those items accomplished. The next strategy is, or the next item will be planning level concepts and cost estimates. So especially with the larger items, we need to figure out what the cost is going to be and how we can incorporate those into our work program and get those completed. The next step is recommendation and summary, and then project management and coordination. My next slide is going to be a timeline. So we're currently in June. Again, we're wrapping up the review of existing information, and we're starting the data collection. Concurrently, we have going on is we're finding opportunities at this time on what we can do in the corridor to make improvements to bicycle and pedestrian facilities we have on A1A. And some of those will be included on the next slide. Following that, we're going to be doing the short-term improvements, mid and long-term strategies, and that's going to be an ongoing process. And if there's things that we identify early on and we can implement short-term, that's what we're going to do. And again, the rest of the timeline, things are just starting with the rest of the timeline, but the final deliverable, the final product should be delivered in the fall in October. Okay, so these are the types of countermeasures this study is finding that we could implement, again, in short-term, midterm, or long-term. So provide curb extensions, and by extending the curbs, you're reducing the crosswalk length, which is reducing the pedestrian crossing distances across the travel lanes. Install, upgrade pedestrian lighting at crosswalks for better pedestrian visibility to the traveling public. Widen shoulders where feasible to mark the shoulders for bicycles. We can't mark the shoulders, paved shoulders for bicycles unless there's at least 5 feet of pavement width. So if it can widen to mark the shoulders for bicycles, that's something we can consider. Installing the Sharrow pavement markings, which we've seen on previous slides. So just putting that symbol on the pavement to remind the traveling public bicycles do have a right to be there. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but the Sharrows can only be placed on the travel lanes if the posted speed is 35 miles per hour or less. Also, we're looking at replacing worn and faded detectable warning surfaces at crosswalk locations. Those are those yellow mats at the bottom of the curb ramps. They have the little domes in them. So we want to make sure those are highly visible. Install high emphasis crosswalks at signalized intersections. The high emphasis not only has the longitudinal bars, but they also have the transverse bars, and they're easier to see. And those are installed typically at signalized intersections, and then restriping crosswalks to improve visibility. So those are the types of items this safety study is starting to identify as potential countermeasures. So next, our 7 projects, resurfacing projects in the 5-year work program. So here's a map. I know there's a lot going on in the map. The legend on the right is a numerical order of the project number. And then it's color coded for where in the county, where on A1A in the county, each of these projects is. And the following slides will kind of break things down, and I will talk about what the limits of each of these are and what cities they're in. So I'm going to be working from south to north. The first one is going to be in Boca Raton. So this is from Southeast 31st Street to south of Grand Court. Project manager at FDOT is Henry Okina. And the map on the right can show you the limits of what this project is. And what the project currently includes is resurfacing the roadway, an existing shared use path. We're reducing the travel lanes to 11 feet to accommodate 6-foot buffered bike lanes. So we're taking a foot from the travel lane, we're restriping it so there's an extra foot on the bicycle lane. We're installing Sharrows on the bridge. The bridge does not have enough pavement width to provide a bicycle lane at this time. So we're putting Sharrows on the bridge and filling in sidewalk gaps and adding additional signage at the mid-block crossings. So those are the current improvements planned for this project. This project, the plans are complete, but the project is not scheduled to let until August 2027. So this is plans in district, it's called. So completed, we'll revisit it before the project is actually let. The next one is in Highland Beach, and this is on State Road A1A from south of Grand Court to south of Linton Boulevard. Project manager Brad Salisbury. And here's a map of what the basic project limits are. And this project is 3.349 miles in length. This project actually was recently let and was scheduled to start construction on Monday. I haven't heard that that didn't happen, but that's when it was scheduled to actually start construction. The improvements include roadway widening to provide the 5-foot bike lanes, because again, you need 5 feet of pavement to actually mark the shoulders for bicycles. Improve drainage to reduce ponding on both the bike lanes and the travel lanes. Upgrade the asphalt path to meet ADA standards, and that's an existing path. Update mid-block pedestrian crossings to the latest standards and install additional signage. So no passing zones in areas of concern. Okay, the next project is in Delray Beach, and this is from Linton Boulevard to East Atlantic Avenue, and the project manager is Hyan U. And this project includes existing bicycle lanes to remain. So there are existing bicycle lanes in portions of the project, and those are to remain. We're going to upgrade pedestrian lighting at Linton Boulevard, Casuarina Road, and East Atlantic Avenue. existing mid-block crossings to remain. Again, we're updating pedestrian signal features for ADA compliance and upgrading 4 mid-block crossings to rectangular rapid flashing beacons. And if you don't know what those are, that's going to be, it's going to be a diamond yellow sign, and below it, there's little rectangular lights that are activated by a push button. So those lights just help bring the driver's attention to, hey, something's going on, let's pay attention here. Okay, now we're moving north. We're going to be in Lake Worth Beach and Palm Beach, and this is from south of Lake Avenue to north of Ibis Way. The project manager is Vandana Nagel. And here's a map kind of showing what the limits of this project are. And what this project is doing, it's increasing the sidewalk width from 5 feet to 6 feet, increasing the paved shoulder width from 3 feet to 5 feet. Again, then we can mark it for bicycles. Installing 2 mid-block crossings, and these are going to be located at Raymond Floyd Golf Course and Phillips Ocean Park. Okay, again in the town of Palm Beach, and this is from north of Ibis Way to north of Emerald Beach Way. Our project manager again is Vandana. The map of this project limits are on the right, and the proposed improvements include providing a 5-foot bicycle lane where feasible and shallow pavement markings where bicycle lanes are not feasible. So again, if the shoulder is less than 5 feet wide, we cannot provide the markings, so we put shallows there. Including the actuated flashing beacons with additional signage before Sloan's Curve and Widener's Curve, just to give the traveling public more notice that there's a change ahead. And speed reduction signs ahead before Sloan's Curve and Widener's Curve. Okay, still in the town of Palm Beach. This is from north of Emerald Way to south of Royal Palm Way. Our project manager is Tuck Lee. And this project is going to be installing shallow pavement markings because we don't have the shoulder width to mark for bicycles, replacing broken sidewalks, and updating lighting at intersections. And our last project is going to be south of John D. MacArthur Park entrance to Portage Landing North. Our project manager is actually here. It's Jeffrey Robert. And this project is in North Palm Beach, and it includes repaving the existing pavement, minor widening and restriping to provide 8-foot designated bike lanes. There's no widening in the park. Outside the park, we are widening to put 8-foot bike lanes, upgrading lighting at signalized intersections, and upgrading pedestrian signalization at intersections. And this is a kind of a summary of what are the department's vision or what our goals based on our constraints at this time. We're looking to provide 11 to 12-foot travel lanes, improve bicycle accommodations on A1A, provide properly signed 5 to 7-foot marked bicycle lanes on A1A, provide sidewalks on both sides of the road, ranging from 6 foot to 12 foot on the west side and 6 foot on the east side. So that's where we are right now, and I would welcome your questions.
All right, thank you, Chris. Staff, are there any public comments on this item?
Yes, Madam Chair, we've received a public comment from Mark Horning on behalf of Florida Share the Road Coalition. I'm going to read it. One of the resurfacing projects contained in the 5-year surfacing program is FID number 44766115201 from the southern limits of Boca Raton to the southern limits of Highland Beach. The details of wider buffered bicycle lanes and pedestrian improvements are amazing. However, the section on either approach to the Boca Inlet Bascule Bridge needs some immediate improvements. How soon could sharrows and any accompanying signage be installed in that area? There have been recent incidents and encounters in the specific area that illustrate confusion on behalf of law enforcement and drivers as to what the requirements are for traveling through this area.
So I know there's a planned meeting that we have with our Director of Development to address some of those type of concerns. So I will be able to follow up with information. I can't give you an update now as to when improvements could be installed in the short term. But I will follow up.
Thank you. Okay, I have several public comments, so we'll go ahead and start with Jim. Or sorry, I have several comments from the committee.
Yes, Jim Bell with the city of Boca. I noticed on the slide with the Boca, widening of this, I mean, the Boca A1A project. The description of the work, doesn't show a sidewalk on the east side of A1A. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because the city is considering removing that requirement from our code because of the environmental impact to the dune and the beach vegetation. So it appears on the description that was provided here that that's not going to happen. But then there was a later slide that said you'd like to have sidewalks on the east side as well. So I just,
So my notes say shared use path on the west side and south project limit to Camino Real to install sidewalk on the east side.
okay, so, but north of, the city is considering removing the requirement on the east side, the sidewalk, north of Palmetto Park Road to the city line. So do you know if there are any future plans and any maps or any future documents that FDOT has where that is something that you would possibly consider in the future? Because we would like to know that because we're thinking about removing that requirement.
Guess I would have to get back to you, if that's okay. I know there are other projects on A1A that we're only having the sidewalk on the west side due to other constraints. So, but I don't want to give you incorrect information, so I'm going to have to follow up with the
Okay, that'd
project
be fine.
manager. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim. Next, Alex.
And this may be, because I'm a bit confused maybe on something that you pointed out, so I just may need some clarification here. One of your first slides included a table that identified improvements to be implemented by traffic operations.
Yep.
So you had the table, and basically all the improvements that were identified there were just sharrows.
Sharrows and signage, yes.
And I have some concerns about the use of sharrows in this type of road. I'm not sure about the safety effectiveness of that. Then you got into details about specific projects on A1A that did include, in most instances, the establishment of bicycle lanes or enhancements to bicycle lanes. You widen bicycle lanes, you made them buffer when they were not buffer, and so forth. So we're talking about two different sets of projects, ones that only include sharrows, because some of them mention the same municipalities that you referenced later on. So that's my confusion. Are we talking about?
I'd be happy to talk that through. Okay, so the table is the short-term improvements. Those are things that can be implemented within the next 6 months, right? Things that go through our 5-year work program, those are projects that are a little farther out, and we program resurfacing projects. So we have a state statute that requires us to resurface the roads when they get to a certain condition. And that's based on crack rut ride. And so as projects are programmed for resurfacing, we go through the corridor and we try to implement as many safety improvements as we can within the guidelines of a resurfacing project. So all those projects, those 7 projects I provided detail on where we're widening, those are things in the 5-year work program that are in combination because the limits of the resurfacing project, it's based on the limits of the resurfacing project. So we're trying to do whatever we can within that existing project. The table with the short-term improvements are things we can do here and now for all practical purposes.
Okay.
And they're not so expensive that we have to kind of plan them out in our 5-year work program.
Some are short-term measures, and then you have the longer-term measures for
Correct.
some of those
Yep.
areas. Okay.
All right, thank you. Moving on, Naresh.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. And we've been actively engaged in discussions with FDOT. And obviously, everyone is aware there are a lot of safety concerns along A1A, and you have several RRR projects planned in the upcoming years. And also, it's not usual for any agency to come and do regular work on A1A, do the resurfacing project this year, and come back again to do massive enhancements. And my understanding is any RRR project, it has a preliminary desktop level safety component involved. You coordinate with traffic cops. And all the proposed planning improvements, sharrows and enhancing ADA and crosswalks with high emphasis. And to me, it appears a basic, quick safety improvements, which are typically included in RRR project anyway. And our ask and request to the DOT being, we need to do a comprehensive safety audit along A1A to see what we really look at the existing crashes, especially involving pedestrians and bicyclists, and to see where the majority of the crashes are happening and what are some of the contributing causes. And we may need to start looking beyond looking at the shadows and, restriping crosswalks and supplementing the existing crosswalks with RRFPs. Those are very short-term improvements. We typically work with traffic ops, so we don't need to wait for RRR projects or any massive projects to take place to proceed with those improvements. But I think the ongoing safety assessment study, our request and ask to DOT include local agencies to do a detailed safety audit and look beyond much more comprehensive safety solutions, looking at the existing speed limits and design aspects. And if our goal is Vision Zero, and having a shadows on a roadway where we know most of the pedestrian and bicyclist activity, bicyclists tend to go side by side. And especially, shadows are not effective, and you can't even put it if the existing posted speed limit is 35 miles per hour or higher. And even if you have an existing speed limit 30, and if your prevailing speed is more than 35, nobody is going to feel comfortable using it. So I think our observation and request to DOT to widen the scope of the safety study to a bigger scale and include audit and include local agencies and walk through the corridor and do a detailed evaluation and come up with those improvements and potentially incorporate those in the upcoming RRR projects or plan a separate project for safety enhancement.
Okay, thank you.
So just to follow up on that, I'm assuming that there is coordination with any impacted local jurisdiction on on all of these projects?
Yes, the project managers reach out to each municipality. So that is going to be the FDOT project manager. And then if there's a consultant doing the design, there should be a second follow-up. Out of my projects, I'm in constant communication with the municipalities over a dozen times throughout the length of design. So
thank you.
That's standard.
Yep. Okay. Terrence.
Yes, my initial question was going to be why the MacArthur Park project didn't extend further south into Singer Island, but now I understand that you're basically constraining your limits to the limits of the RRR project, which raises my next obvious question. What happens if there's an issue 5 feet on the other side of the line where your RRR project's
We have a little wiggle room that we can adjust the limits.
quarter mile? Like if it's right there,
So
it's kind of my point of back to his that, while we understand, when you got crews out there, you fix it, but not having a comprehensive sort of analysis, you're going to have a very nice and improved section and then an old section that may actually be in conflict and create a more dangerous situation because we didn't string these together or go to like natural limits where you provide continuity.
Okay. So we have to work within the framework. So we have a budget for doing the resurfacing projects and we have lane miles. We have to do a certain amount of lane miles a year. There's not a bunch of wiggle room in that. And so every year, the whole state highway system is driven by a multi-purpose survey vehicle and they look at crack ride. And when we get all that information back, we decide how to program the resurfacing projects. Frequently, we'll tie into the old project, the previous project. There's a pavement segment in the road and that project might tie into that limit because the pavement has aged in that section at the same rate where the project 500 feet to the south, it might have been a different project. That might have been a newer pavement. That might have been a more recent project. So there's a lot of thought that goes into the limits. If there's nothing coming up in the 5-year work program for the section that you're talking about, there is a little wiggle room in adjusting project limits, but it's not just it's multi-factored. It's not just one factor to decide if we're going to include an improvement in a RRR.
All right, thank you. Next, we're going to go to Jason.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first is related to the timeline that you showed for the feasibility study. I didn't see anything in there related to stakeholder input from the municipalities that would be affected. Where does that come into play?
Raj, speak to that if that's okay, Raj. Raj is the project manager for the feasibility study.
Raj Shanmugam with FDOT Planning Office. At the moment, we are doing a preliminary feasibility study. It's not drawn out process right now. We want to do a quick evaluation of the entire corridor, like Terrence requested. After that, the next step would be going to individual communities and trying to get their feedback. Initial of what we are doing right now within 10 months, it'll be too much to do community involvement or having the local municipalities involved in it, although we wanted to include the TPA in the process, so you'll be informed of what we are doing. But it is envisioned in the future, we will be coming back, and as we identify segments that we wanted to improve, they will come back to the local municipalities to get feedback.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that, if you could rethink that through, because I think it's important to get the municipalities' input upfront rather than after the fact.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
And then my other comment is, just for the record, you mentioned that the project between Grand Court and Linton Boulevard is just in Highland Beach, but the northern segment's in Delray Beach.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Kim?
Just a minor suggestion. Like Alex, I was a little confused, right? Because
Yeah.
I watched the presentation.
Kim, can you please use your microphone?
Sorry, is that not on? Better. Sorry about that. Kim Delaney for the record from Treasure Coast RPC. So thank you to the department for, expending the effort in really trying to improve the safety condition, because bike ped safety is a big deal for everyone. It's a really big deal for Palm Beach County, especially on this corridor. To Alex's point, to follow up, it was a little confusing for me because I watched the presentation. I thought, oh, this is sharrows and signage. That's deflating considering how much of a challenge we have on that corridor. And then your presentation continued with a really pretty extensive set of improvements. If you could repeat, you have slide number 4. That's a summary of the improvements that are to be implemented by traffic operations. It would be helpful as we circulate this information, if you could just create one of those for all the other improvements that are being made. There isn't one of those summary tables when you get into the detail.
Okay.
That would be very helpful for the elected officials we work with to understand.
Okay,
the
so you
holistic
want a
nature.
table showing the breakdown of what's included in each project and municipality related to the resurfacing projects?
Exactly. And
Okay.
there's 2 sets of maps. It's just the second one is a little buried. So that would be helpful for us as we send this information out.
Understood. Good feedback. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kim. All right. So Chang?
Share operation is always I share the safety concern implementing the share operation on 35 miles per hour road due to the speed.
I'm sorry, can you please use your mic?
Working?
There it is.
It
Yeah.
is. Thank you. Now it is. Thank you. Magic. As you know, that depends on the type of the bikers, they range from the casual bikers to a performance professional bikers. Then the speed the variation, the range can be ranging from 15 miles per hour all the way to 30 miles per hour. And then on the driver side, on the vehicle travel side, on 30 mile per hour road, we know 85% higher speed can be as high as 45. So it's further enlarged this gap between the speed of the 2 different distinctive mode of users here. So I really do have the concern on that. So I will recommend also in parallel to these recommendations, you might also consider the option that where you have 12 feet travel lanes, you might want to consider reducing that lane width to 10 feet and then relocated that 2 feet and then converted the whole way the travel lane facility to a buffer bike lane. And I mean, at least consider this alternative at least at a location that you find that implementing the share operation is indeed has safety implications.
Understood. Thank you for your feedback.
Okay, thank you, Shangzhen. Any other comments from the committees? Yes, Naresh?
Yeah, just one follow-up. If possible, could we request the department to come back and provide a overview of your safety analysis in the fall? Hey, this is what we did. And
An
these are
update
the-
on the feasibility study that we're conducting? Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, so I mean, we are looking more about the safety aspect, and again, our concern from the city standpoint, we see a sense of disconnect here about, different agencies' participation and even within the department, how the safety office, traffic ops are engaged and analyze the problems and how they are getting translated into the RRR projects. So we wanted to see, and obviously if you could involve us in the feasibility or safety audit or safety analysis desktop, however you call it, include us in the process so that we can take it back to our community and to see, hey, this is what DOT has analyzed, this is what they are seeing as the trend, this is what they could do and how these improvements are going to help the community. So we want to see an update and be thoroughly involved in the process. So that's our request.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Naresh. We are going to be doing a detailed evaluation. That includes safety because that's the number one priority for this study that we are doing. As much as we want to come up with a solution, those are short-term as well as long-term. As I pointed out before, we will be coming back in front of TPA again and present what we have achieved. So it might be more than one time we'll come back and show you where we are at so that you all will feel comfortable with it.
Thank you, Raj. I'm trying to wrap up comments because we still have several items on the agenda. So I'm going to take this last comment from Vicky.
Madam Chair, just quickly, I wanted to speak in support of Naresh's request for comprehensive safety audits. I know for the RTA, we've been looking at safe access, pedestrian and bike to our stations. And what we're finding is, it's not just the bike path or the sidewalk, but it's sort of the larger contextual area that can cause safety issues. So we have, excuse me, we have noticed that as well. And then just a question of process, short, medium, and long-term projects. So your short term projects, are they primarily the signage?
Right, the things we can do short-term and they're generally not very expensive improvements. So they're things that the department can respond to quickly and can be installed quickly. So there's limitations to how much work that could include. It could include, because we have to balance our 5-year work program for program stability.
Right.
So it can't be the heavy lifts that are the short-term improvements.
And these short-term wouldn't be in the 5-year program?
So the
They could
short-term
be done
improvements
more
can be
quickly?
implemented within the next 6 months. So
Thank
as soon as the work order is issued, 60 to 90 days.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chris. I just have one final comment. I thank DOT for its comprehensive evaluation and the feasibility. It looks like you're looking into a number of safety improvements that are very just promoting safety. And so as a whole, I think it's really positive. Coordination with the communities is key, which I think you've heard. My only specific technical comment is on the John D. MacArthur. I noted in one of your slides, you were widening the road from 11 to 12-foot lanes. And it kind of in line with Shenzhen, I would encourage you to look at potentially at least maintaining the 11 feet and using that extra foot instead of widening to create either a
Providing
buffer.
8-foot buffered bike lanes north of or outside of the park limits.
Yes, that's great. But you're only proposing a 6-foot sidewalk. So I'd love to have that extra foot to go to maybe a 7-foot sidewalk than a 12-foot lane. Just a suggestion.
Understood.
Thank
Thank you so much for your feedback.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we are moving on to item 3C, safety and railroad crossings. So we have DOT up again. DOT, it's your day. William Leedy, DOT consultant, to present this item.
Well, yeah. Good morning. It's William Leidy. I had to attend virtually today. I apologize for that. Unique and Anna both had conflicts, so I'll be presenting this. Next slide, please. So the first thing that we wanted to touch on was existing safety measures so that everyone's aware throughout the county and South Florida. Crossing exit gates. I'm going to focus on state roads here. They're at every state road except for State Road 704 and State Road 804 along the FEC. One thing to note is exit gates are recommended when the median is less than 100 feet. So if you do see some locations where there isn't an exit gate, you do want to check that median. There are pedestrian gates now on all state road crossings, as well as a lot of county and city crossings, as well as rail dynamic envelope markings. The same thing, all state road crossings, as well as a lot of county and city crossings at multiple locations throughout both FEC and SFRC. Delineators, raised pavement markers, and edge striping have been installed to improve safety. There's fencing and landscaping. Again, we noted multiple locations, but I'm going to talk about some additions to that on a slide in a couple slides. And then in addition, especially with Brightline Phase 2 and Phase 1, there were do not stop on tracks and crisis support signage installed. Next slide, please. All right, so like I said, we're going to talk here about fencing and/or landscaping. One project that DOT is advancing with Brightline and the municipalities is a RAISE grant to enhance safety. It covers the FEC Brightline corridor from Miami-Dade through Brevard counties. The federal grant portion is $25 million. Brightline and FDOT are each contributing $10 million, so an estimated total project cost of $45 million. The main mitigation aims are to reduce vehicle collisions and trespasser strikes. The supplemental safety measures to be installed are dynamic envelopes, delineators, raised pavement markings, edge striping, a lot of fencing and landscaping, and I believe it's at about 35 locations specific to that in Palm Beach County, as well as do not stop on tracks and crisis support signage. The agreement's currently under review by the FRA. They anticipated signing it in May. We're now at the beginning of June and it's not signed yet, but hopefully very shortly that agreement will be signed by FRA and that grant can move forward and that project can move forward. Next slide, please. One grant that's a little farther along is the OC grant. This was funded, the grant with 12.9 million with an FDOT match at 9.8. This is on SFRC. It includes Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. It's work on 25 at-grade rail crossings. You can see there's a lot of different items included in the improvements. 8 Palm Beach County crossings are included in this grant. And like I said, that grant was executed in fall of 2023. There was selection of a CEI earlier this spring. So they are moving forward with that grant and some of those projects will start to become implemented here in the next couple of years. Next slide, please. An additional item I wanted to touch on is traffic signal preemption, which a lot was done with Brightline Phase 2. There's the requirements, any signal within 200 feet of a railroad crossing where the highway traffic queues have the potential to extend across the crossing. And then it takes into account traffic backups. The study is complete. There are 3 proposed locations on the FEC Brightline corridor, Indiantown, Blue Heron, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, as well as several local county crossings that are being studied as well. That continues to be advanced. There is no construction funding that I'm aware of for any of those projects yet, but they do anticipate advancing some of those into design here shortly. Next slide, please. One thing we do want to highlight is the B-Rail Smart campaign, which is an FDOT program in District 4 specifically. It occurs in the month of September. It coincides with what used to be called Rail Safety Week. It's now called C-Tracks Think Train Week, which is included in September. That's a nationwide, actually a North America-wide program. But B-Rail Smart is an FDOT District 4. You can see there's pop-up events and signage, etc. Next slide, please. This has some stats on it. Last year, 2023, over 19 million impressions, tens of thousands of educational materials were distributed. There were 51 actual events, which is double from 2022 into 2023, and then 4 times the amount of impressions. That's something that we anticipate increasing again in 2024, maybe not to the extent it did from 2022 to 2023, but we again anticipate another increase. And the next slide, which is the last slide. Again, reiterating the B-Rail Smart message that any time is train time and to always expect a train. And again, to reiterate the B-Rail Smart campaign, be on the lookout for materials and events in the month of September, and the C-Tracks Think Train Week, which is September 23rd to 29th this year. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you, William. Are there any committee comments? Yes, Sheng-Zhen.
The town of Jupiter right now is in the last stage of establishing the quiet zone. And we are lucky that 4 out of our 6 crossing got the 4 quadrant gate. And that was the ultimate supplemental safety measures we can get. But 2 other crossing, right now, we don't have the sufficient SSM there. And so I have I'm particularly interested in one of the countermeasure you listed as SSM, and I request that to be clarified, which is the delineator, RPM, and the edge line. In your slide, you claim that is the supplemental safety measures. Would you please clarify on that? Based on my knowledge, only the traversable mediums that meet the certain distance requirement can consider SSM, and any modification from that would be fallback to the ASM. So please clarify that. And then the other question I have is, I was advised that by the FRA that such safety measures will be installed gradual towards the north end of the rail corridor, including the town. So I want to make sure, what is the time schedule for you to install the safety measures on 2 crossing that we have that currently doesn't have the quadrant gate safety measures?
Okay. Yeah, I'll answer the first. And the supplemental safety measures of the delineators, the one main benefit those have are to keep vehicles off the tracks. They do not assist with quiet zone implementation. You're correct. There was just an incident this week or last week on Brightline FEC down in Broward County where a vehicle was on the tracks and was struck by the train. So that is the main benefit that the delineators provide adjacent to or across the rail corridor to prevent vehicles from entering the tracks. As far as your second question, I'm not sure what the 2 crossings are and what grant or what project they are going with. So if you could clarify that, maybe I can answer.
2 crossing that doesn't currently have the quadrant gate is Center Street and the Alta A1A, and also the Riverside Drive and Alta A1A. Yes. So if you could find out the information for me, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I will do that.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Jamie.
Thank you. I had a question on the fencing that you had mentioned on there. I know that there'd been some fencing done in town of Lantana. And in speaking with them, it seems like it hasn't been the best as far as effective. That's because it was only done on one side and it was kind of sporadic in the locations they did it. And there are also some spacing there. It's not continuous. So what kind of actual fencing are you guys proposing to do moving forward? Because I'm looking at that for Lakewood Beach as well.
I don't know the specifics of Lantana, but it'll be a similar type of fencing. There's a FEC approved fencing that they allow along the corridor. Like I said, I believe there's 32 locations in Palm Beach. They vary in length from 100 feet to a quarter mile. So, 32 locations, that's probably not the best gauge of how many installations it'll be. You are correct. It does work better when it's on both sides or when there's a hard barrier on the other side. There are a lot of locations where this is going to be on both sides where it is installed. But yeah, it'll be similar fencing as was installed at Lantana, I'm sure. Now it has been shown to reduce the amount of pedestrian incursions onto the tracks. But again, it's not foolproof, obviously.
Okay, yeah, I'd be curious what kind of fencing it is. There's multiple kinds I've seen in Palm Beach County alone. like by the Bright Line Station here
It's-
downtown West Palm versus a little bit further south? It seems like there are multiple types.
The one they're going with now is what I would call standard, like chain link fence that's 6 feet tall. Typically has some sort of wire across the top.
It's like the anti-climb or the
Yeah, the anti-climb, yeah. So
All right, Alex.
I just want to highlight an item that I have brought up before, which is issues with the timing for the crossing at Clematis Street on the FEC tracks. The time between when the arms start going down and when they're fully down is too short for the width of the crossing. That is resulting in pedestrians being stuck in between the arms, not being able to get out. Even though, again, those pedestrians were in the crossing and when the warning started to go through. So it's something that I brought up to the FEC multiple times, no response. So again, the issue is the crossing was widened, the distance between the arms was widened a few years ago, but the timing between when the arms start going down and when they're completely down is too short. And again, because we have that prevents the pedestrians from getting out of the crossing. And that happens again on Clematis, which has significant pedestrian activity. I have timed it, I have videos. So people get stuck, and these are able-bodied individuals. I have very long legs. I have gotten stuck, and I've seen many people with elderly individuals, with people with disabilities, families with strollers or little kids, and they also get trapped. So it's, again, an issue that is recurring. And I just want to highlight it again. I understand it's an FEC issue, but since we have somebody from FDOT dealing with railroad safety, I want to highlight it again as a problem that has been brought up before and still has not been addressed.
Thank you, Alex. Mo.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I'll pass that message along.
Yeah, thank you. I was actually not going to talk about that. But Alex, if you have any videos and or data about these things, please share them with us. I think we can help with that. That's at the signal, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, if you could share those with us, we probably can help with that. My question is, last year we sent out a list of at least 25 intersections, if I remember, to FDOT that we identified the safety concerns at railroad crossings near signals that are on the SHS. And recommended that if DOT does look at them and see how they can, and they want to improve safety there, our concern was that at these locations, the tracks are pretty close to the stop bar at the signal. And we want to make sure that there is probably a pre-signal, as they call it, installed to make sure that drivers don't find themselves having to stop or sit on the tracks waiting for the green light. My question, and I have got that if DOT has already prioritized a pre-signal on North Lake Boulevard. And that was kind of the things that we are looking at. Are you aware of those other 25 or so
I'm not
locations
personally.
that we shared with FDOT, and are those included in this program or this project that you are working on?
I'm not personally aware, Mo. The one I am aware of is North Lake, which is, I believe, past 30% design now. But I'm not aware of the others. I've not been involved in those at all. But I will ask Anna and reach out to her and see if there's been any advancement on the other 24 locations.
Yeah, actually, the whole thing started when about a year or two, a citizen sent me an email about her experience sitting on Fern Street, I believe, approaching Quadrille, where she, freaked out, sitting on the tracks, waiting for the green light, imagining those horror movies, imagining a train coming at her. So we looked at that as a result of it, and we identified more than 30 intersections that have similar conditions. And I think 3 of them are county intersections, and we already are working on getting a grant, safety grant from through FDOT to fix them. And there were, I believe, 2, Alex, you may want to follow up on that, that are the responsibility of West Palm Beach. And I share them with Kevin. back then, and 25 plus were the responsibility of DOT.
All right.
Thank you. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Mo. Vicky.
Regarding the fencing, Vicky Katanis, SFRTA. Yeah, I know that for the RTA, our maintenance of way department has identified some as particularly high trespassing sections. And we have projects proposing what's called tough grid fence, which apparently is sort of much more effective for these high trespassing areas. So I don't know if you have information on that. We'd be happy to send you some. And then also the fencing program, that's for the FEC or the art. Okay.
Yeah, that's exclusive to FEC Brightline.
All
And
right.
it's actually a Brightline led project.
Okay. Well, thanks very much.
Yep. Thanks, Vicky.
Okay. Last comment from looks like Khurshid.
Khurshid
Good,
Miadin,
good
you may
morning.
proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My comment is that have you considered studying a similar example, not only in US, but anywhere else in the world, where a high-speed train like this running in the middle of downtowns at grade, and how are they address the safety concerns and maybe learn from them and implement here?
I know Brightline has done a little bit of that. I do not believe FDOT has gone down that path yet, but I know that Brightline has looked a little bit overseas at some potential mitigation measures that they could implement in this corridor.
Do you know which example they found in the world?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. No other comments I see. So we are moving on to informational item 3D, tactical urbanism overview. So at this time, I would like to invite Win Dang, founder of DDEC, to present this item.
Hi, good morning. We're still in the morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to present on this item. I'm going to go quickly for press of time and really to go over what is tactical urbanism and really introduce this area, this type of concept that can be implemented in Palm Beach County. So as we go through, what is it? Why does it really matter to us? And how can we turn these tactical exploration into actual projects and turn them into infrastructure projects that we can receive grant funding and bring infrastructure dollars into this area? And perhaps the most important and the most notable tactical project that you may know already as we vacation in New York City is Times Square. And this occurred during 2007, 2008, when I was living in New York, as Jeanette Sadekhan changed this landscape by taking and repurposing space for pedestrian use. And during that same time, we in the city, in the city of West Palm Beach and in Palm Beach County, were also experimenting, and really on a smaller scale. But in 2007, it was the parking day that was presented by the DDA, transforming some parking spaces back into public space. But what that really makes a lot of sense is that it shaped the policy that was presented over and over again about outdoor dining. And more importantly, it was the outdoor dining experience that we encouraged and was able to transform during COVID and the COVID landscape. And as the city was a smart city collaborative in the year 2020 as part of this research project and Transport for America, a lot of this testing and piloting shaped and helped because of all the transformation that occurred on Clematis Street itself. This project was part of the city's mobility study that was adopted in 2018. And again, in 2019, these projects were being implemented as we see in the city. So what is tactical urbanism? And what we can simply describe it as something like a pop-up bike lane. It's a demonstration project. It's a pilot project. It's to showcase behavioral changes, right? So in 2015, the city of West Palm Beach had this grand idea of doing a pop-up bike lane without any permission from the city commission to see if there was any behavioral changes, with a very small amount of really traffic cones and some community support and really putting out and testing this idea for only 1 week. The outcome of that was the idea that yes, capacity can be transformed into something else, especially in the very important downtown and the waterfront area. But also the city have embarked in this area of creating a bicycle master plan in the city. And it really started from there. And now in 2024, the waterfront, there's a project right now called Your Waterfront, Your Way, and it's changing this vision. And this is coming up over and over again. And as we go through 1990, 95, 2000, 2015, all the vision has come down that there should be more mobility access. And that's the really true intent of tactical urbanism. Of course, in 2016 and 2018, the city also received grant funding opportunities in the city for from the Knights Foundation. And this is where asphalt art and a lot of this testing of concept comes in. This is a project that was done with this public school program here at the Dreyfus School of the Arts with Alex Hansen and his group in the planning department to really transform this intersection. It really starts with students engaging with us as public officials and consultants and professionals in this area to create a better user experience for us to cross the street. And of course, each one of these projects are volunteer-based, but what that did, it shaped a lot of policies that went into the new update of the MUTCD, right? So since the MUTCD was recently adopted from a very long time in December 2023, there's been some changes. As you know, Federal Highway does not have a ruling for or against painting of an intersection. They decided to stay silent on this matter, but a lot of cities have implored and explored this because there is a need for safety improvements at this intersection. So moving forward in the city's capital program, it is something that should be considered from a safety, from a pedestrian and cyclist beneficial perspective, because this is something that the school kids and the students are asking. So it's not just here locally that I'm trying to show examples and here in the city or here in Palm Beach County, but it's a global phenomenon as, you know, cities around the world. And there's been a huge transformation of a global movement of really tactical projects. And we think of tactical projects and we have to take away of all the beautiful, all the painted, but really quick build projects, right? What can you put it on the ground quickly so that you can change behavior? And we sat through presentations as, you know, is there a resurfacing program that we can go in and restripe our travel lanes or whatever that may be? Why is this important? But it's because there's a lot of funding available out there, available right now. And there's been changes in these rules, and then we see it over and over again, right? So simply put it, and I know that the TPA has been you know, advocating for SS4A grant. And we think of it up to this point as it's either a planning grant or it's a, you know, construction grant, but the rules have changed. So the first round, and whether you are aware of this or not, the first round, you know, it was mandated by Congress that 40% of the grant application goes to planning because there's not a lot of planning grants out there or a planning project implementation. But this time, a lot has changed. And I wanted to spend a little time on talking about tactical project, experimentation, and low-cost projects. So your resurfacing program. If your resurfacing program is on a bicycle network and you see an opportunity right there, that is the first thing that you should be consider, right? And Naresh, congratulations to the city of Boca for receiving $5 million, is it? $5 million for, oh, I'm sorry, I overspoke, $4 million. It's still a very large capital program. And you do not need to have your action plan in place for exactly to receive additional funding. And this is what I have been trying to get us to a point where it's, whether if it's an update, and by the way, the TPA
Vision Zero plan is coming up for an update, the TPA is also eligible for funding to come in and do an update plan. There's signal and technology. Think about like if you want to do, and I was looking through the LRTP, there's a lot of signal upgrades there. And if you can think about signal preemption for our fire and fire rescue and our those services, we can upgrade our signals with the SS4A funding availability right there. And so, don't discredit this. We think of it tactical urbanism, but let's figure out how we can bring projects such as mid-block crossing. It will also pay for any kind of feasibility study that you're doing, or what we familiarize ourselves with road safety audits. The grant will pay for those. If there's a road safety audit for the county and all of our roadway network, the grant will pay for it. So I just want to, spend a little time on this and just really put it back to, yes, we can experiment, and our experimentation have really shaped a lot of policies out there. A lot of the Vision Zero policies that's in place right now is based on the experimentations that we do here locally, right? Just look at Okeechobee. Many years ago, that is, we would never think that we can have a separated and protected bike lane on Okeechobee. And right now, the DOT is going through a full project to expand this, connecting all the way from I-95 all the way to Flagler Drive. That's a huge project. We're talking about over $10 million worth of investment into biking infrastructures in this area. And helping reducing crossing distance or whatever that may be, that's very important to us. So really, in short, it's like, what are some quick build implementation projects that you can think of that could be relevant? I want to throw this image out there in New York City, even though they have this implemented over 10 years now, but this is called a turning wedge, where in locations where it's you have high turning speed or a certain type of crashes, they have implemented this to reduce the conflict. And it's cheap, it's implementable, and this is what will help us bring quick build infrastructure into this area. And of course, this next step is really for me to do a little advocate, pilot your new ideas. If you want to make your child very miserable by taking them out to do a tactical project all day in the sun, you are also welcome to do that. But really, these type of projects build consensus, and it helps with our public engagement, because we know the hardest part about any implementation project is really getting public buy-in. And, these type of projects will really help us get us to where the county needs to be. And it's trending down on our crash data. So that quickly conclude my presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Wynn. Are there any committee comments on the presentation at this point in time? All right. Keep in mind, we have another agenda item as well, so I'd really like to move swiftly through these comments because we still have Vision 2050. I also have a time certain where I have to depart, and there's no vice chair, so 11:35 is my mark. Naresh.
I'll make it really quick. Thank you for the presentation. It's a $5 million total project, $4 million grant, and $1 million local match. So that's all for demonstration planning and supplemental. So I encourage all the municipalities to take advantage of the future rounds of SS4A for this year.
Vicky.
Well, it's a nuts and bolts question. And I'm always, whenever I look at these, the first thing I think of is, how do you get permitting from the local, whoever issues that, the engineering department or whatever, to do these projects?
Oh, yeah. So again, it's these projects are meant to be quick build projects, right? And you do have to work collaboratively with the local. For example, in the city of West Palm Beach, when I was working at as the city traffic engineer, a lot of the projects that was implemented as what would be eligible for this grant and considered tactical and quick build were really going through a maintenance program. And I was the engineer of record. I was the engineer who designed and construct through a maintenance program. And I tackled it on with a resurfacing program where it could be implemented quickly and really in a cost-effective way instead of going through a traditional design bid build methodology. So really, if it's something that you think it would be, well, if there's will, there's a way.
Let's, we can be honest with like the way that politics is, especially if there's a desire to drive change, you can do it quickly. Yeah, of course.
All right, Chang Jen.
Thank you. I'm always thrilled to learn these new things, and thank you for the educational information. But before you go out and paint the intersections colorfully, and before you go out and put the turning wedges on the road, do you need to get the interim approval from MUTCD? Because those are not compliant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there is, so that was one of the comments. So I had a forum, a small forum with the Deputy Secretary Trottenberg of the Federal Highway. And that was the big comment that a lot of cities are referring to. The approval process for a lot of these, and if you submit an approval process and you go through that process, Federal Highway will tell you, for example, advisory bike lane, right? That's something that you can submit for interim approval. They will respond and say they are no longer receiving any more testing and piloting because they've already had so much to study from. So a lot of what the other cities have done is they set policies to test and pilot because it's a pilot, right? It's only temporary. There is no guarantee that it's going to stay current. So it really is a true pilot. For example, the two painted intersection that you see on screen a little bit earlier, those are gone. They were implemented in 2016 and again 2018. And when a resurfacing project, especially if it has federal dollars in it, you have to adhere to the MUTCD. So it was a true test and pilot. So that was the foundation of how you can implement something new and within this area.
Any other comments from the committee? Wynn, thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation. Nathan.
All right, we actually have two items left, Vision Zero, and then we have the Vision 2050. I would like to recommend we table the Vision Zero item, and I will try and get Vision 2050 really quickly. if
Okay.
That would be, but I will need a motion.
I think we would need a motion for that, correct? Yes. All right. So a motion on the table recommended by staff to table the Vision Zero presentation to date certain next month or next agenda item?
I'm seeking a motion to that effect, yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
moved.
Motion by Kim, second by Brian, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, last item then, we have the 2050 TPA.
All right. Nathan George, Long Range Transportation Planning Coordinator. I'm going to give you a very brief snapshot of this presentation, so we're going to cut it a little bit short. But we're here to talk about projects. In the back of the room, there's some information that staff will be available to talk with you about. I'm sure all of you are really interested because projects is the most important part of a long-range transportation plan. There's a lot of additional text that'll be in the document. I'm going to skip through. So we're entering that final stage of programming projects. We're figuring out what our priorities are and establishing what's going to be included in the plan. So I'm literally going to skip through all of this stuff. Want to highlight for you, this is a data-driven process. So you will be going back out to the public with project information. This is the first teaser, if you will, of that information. And I'll be highlighting those touch points, and the information you see in the back of the room is largely what we'll be highlighting. But these are data-driven exercises to establish what we need to be looking at and considering for funding. This flow chart explains how we're considering projects and how they're going to make their way into the plan. This is the first step. Next step, we're going to be coming back to talk with you about prioritization. Basically, your call for project submissions establish our local desires. We have done a data-driven screening process to establish candidate projects. That's what we're highlighting for everybody in the back. And we're seeking input from the public as we go through the final portion of programming. That's where we'll actually program in our illustrative and committed projects or what gets funded in the plan. We have developed a tool that you can use to review projects, provide your input. There are still some tweaking in terms of how those materials are presented in that online tool, but we are trying to get the word out. We'll discuss this more as we get into programming, but how your projects are in terms of whether they're supported or not. So we'll highlight that when we come back. Skipping over these as well. So the key point here is to tell your neighbors, get folks to come out and give us their input. We need to hear, do people support these projects? Are we missing things? And we're going to have a series of upcoming meetings at the end of the month, trickling slightly into July to get community input on this outreach. We want to remind everybody, tell your neighbors, the folks in the room, the folks who engage with TPA is not going to be enough. We need to tell everybody. So get the word out, tell them to come to the meetings, tell them to use the tool. It's online 24/7. Again, we'll be in the back of the room. I want to say thank you for the very brief presentation to get everybody out of the door on time. And please check out what we have in the back of the room and speak with us.
Thank you, Nathan, for that brief presentation. Appreciate that. All right, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, do any committee members have any comments? Jamie?
Given the late time, I'd like to propose we push our meetings back to 9 o'clock.
Ha, ha, ha.
Second.
Are there any other comments as it relates to the 2050? We're not getting into that today. 2050 project prioritization. At this point in time, I think we all know and appreciate all the hard work that's been done toward this and that is ongoing, and it's essential that each jurisdiction participate actively and provide meaningful input. So thank you for the update, the ongoing updates, and we'll keep engaged through the process. Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks.
Okay, so since item 3F was pushed to date certain July, we are on to administrative items. 4A and 4C are informational only. There's no presentation unless requested by a committee member. Are there any public comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, so our next TAC meeting is scheduled for July 10th, 2024. At this time, our committee member or meeting is adjourned. Thank you.